My name is Elena, and I'm 23 years old now, but the events of this story happened when I was just 17. It was one of those nights that started out perfectly ordinary, yet it ended up being the kind of experience that leaves a mark, lingering in the back of your mind for years to come. At the time, my parents had gone on a trip to Seattle, where we had lived for a few years because of my dad's work. They were visiting old friends and planned to stay there for several days. My older brother Nathan was away at college, leaving me completely alone in the house that week. I didn't mind. I'd stayed alone plenty of times before. It wasn't something I particularly liked, but it wasn't something I feared either. It was a chilly Friday evening, and my best friend Jake had made plans to come over. We thought we'd binge watch movies and order takeout, just to keep the house from feeling too quiet. But as luck would have it, Jake had to leave early due to some last-minute family emergency. By 10:30 p.m, I was alone again. I shrugged it off. It wasn't a big deal. I'd handled it before. After Jake left, I texted my mum to let her know. Predictably, she reminded me to set the alarm and keep in touch. "Lock the doors and don't forget to check the windows," she added, as if I hadn't already done that hours ago. Typical mum. I smiled to myself, reassured by the concern. After a quick goodnight, I activated the alarm system, grabbed a bag of chips, and headed upstairs to my parents' room. They had the biggest TV in the house, and with their massive, cozy bed, it felt like the safest place to settle in for the night. My dog, Milo, a fluffy golden retriever, padded into the room behind me, hopping onto the bed without hesitation. He curled up beside me, his warm body pressed against my legs. I felt at ease. If Milo wasn't worried, why should I be? I flipped through Netflix for a while, trying to find something worth watching. That's when the alarm erupted. The sudden blaring noise cut through the calm like a blade. My heart jumped to my throat. Milo bolted upright, ears perked, growling softly. The piercing sound rattled my bones. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at the flashing red lights on the alarm panel across the room. This had never happened before. I immediately tried to rationalize it. Maybe a faulty sensor, a draft triggering the system. But every door had been locked, every window secured. The alarm wouldn't just go off without reason. I crept toward the door, trying to steady my breathing. The silence outside the room felt unnaturally thick, as if something were lurking just beyond the threshold. I strained to hear, but the alarm masked everything. No footsteps, no creaks. But the unease wouldn't leave me. I locked the bedroom door and backed away, scanning the shadows pooling in the corners of the room. Milo let out a soft, low growl again, his gaze fixed on the crack beneath the door. My pulse quickened. I reached for the bedside drawer where my dad kept a handgun for emergencies. I wasn't naive. He had trained me how to use it, and I'd practiced at the range before. Still, the weight of it in my hands felt heavier than I remembered. I flicked off the safety, holding the gun steady, pointed at the door. Milo stayed rigid beside me, his gaze unwavering. The minutes crawled by, the alarm still screaming through the house. I could feel sweat gathering on the back of my neck, despite the cold air. I told myself it could be nothing. But what if it wasn't? What if someone was downstairs right now, slowly making their way up? I dialed 911, keeping my voice low and steady as I explained the situation. The operator assured me officers were on their way, instructing me to stay on the line. I did, but I never lowered the gun. I stayed frozen like that for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 10 minutes. Finally, flashing blue and red lights flooded through the curtains. I heard a firm knock at the front door and the voice of a police officer calling out, "Police, we're here!" When I finally unlocked the bedroom door and descended the stairs, I found nothing disturbed. The doors were still locked, the windows intact. The officers found no sign of forced entry or tampering. "Probably just a malfunction," one of them said, giving me a reassuring smile. But I could tell he was only saying it to ease my nerves. As they left, Milo and I stood in the doorway, watching their patrol car disappear into the night. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but Milo kept staring at the shadows of the hallway long after the officers had gone. I could feel it too, the sensation that something had been there even if we never saw it. After confirming it was the police, I disarmed the alarm and put the gun away. I opened the door and spoke with them. They assured me that the perimeter was secure and there were no signs of forced entry. When they asked if I wanted them to check inside, I foolishly declined. I thought everything seemed fine. They told me they'd patrol the area and to call if I needed anything. I thanked them, locked the door, and returned to bed. I called my parents to tell them what happened. My dad remained calm, but my mum was frantic. She asked if they should return early, but I convinced her everything was okay. I figured the alarm scared off any intruder. After hanging up, I realised I had forgotten to reset the alarm. I went to the panel and punched in the code, but it wouldn't arm. My stomach dropped. The alarm won't engage if any door is open. I suddenly felt cold. I had to check which door was unlocked. I grabbed the gun again and cautiously made my way downstairs, heart hammering. When I reached the garage, I saw it. The door was wide open. A chill shot down my spine. I slowly entered the garage, scanning the room with the gun raised. My mum's car was there, and I circled it carefully, looking for any sign of movement. As I approached the driver's side, a figure darted from the front of the car and lunged at me. Everything happened so fast. I fell backward, and he pinned me to the ground, his hand over my mouth, gripping the wrist holding the gun. I fired a shot, but missed. He wrestled the weapon from me. His strength was overwhelming. Up close, I saw him clearly. A thin man with scruffy hair, a beard, and a stench that suggested he hadn't bathed in days. He looked like he had been living on the streets. He pressed the cold barrel of the gun to my forehead, leaning in so close I could feel his ragged breath. His voice was a low, trembling whisper, threatening, but laced with desperation. "Make a sound and it's your last," he said, eyes bloodshot and wild, flickering nervously around the room. I could see the sweat trailing down his face, his grip tightening as he yanked me upright and shoved me inside. My legs felt weak beneath me as he forced me onto the living room couch, binding my wrists and ankles with rough ropes he tore from the curtains. The gag bit into the corners of my mouth, silencing any chance I had to scream. I watched helplessly as he prowled upstairs, rifling through drawers and closets, the faint creak of floorboards echoing down the hall. Time stretched endlessly. I lay paralyzed, staring at the shadows stretching across the ceiling, imagining the worst as his footsteps thudded overhead. When he finally returned, he barely glanced at me, peeking outside like a hunted animal. It was nearly 3:30 a.m. when he decided it was safe. Without a word, he slipped out through the front door, leaving me crumpled on the floor like discarded furniture. I twisted and fought against the ropes, but they bit deeper into my skin. Exhaustion took over, and at some point I must have dozed off. Morning light poured in through the window, bright and unforgiving. That's when I heard Jake's voice, frantic, calling my name as he let himself in with the spare key. His footsteps rushed toward me, and I opened my eyes to see his pale face staring in shock. He untied me with trembling hands, and together we called the police. My parents were home by the afternoon, shaken but grateful I was unharmed. We filed the report, but the thief had disappeared without a trace, taking my mum's jewellery, dad's watches, electronics, and the gun. Weeks passed and life slowly returned to normal. My parents installed motion sensors, security cameras, even a new alarm system. Yet something lingered, a gnawing unease I couldn't explain. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I hear footsteps downstairs, only to find nothing when I check. Maybe it's just paranoia, or maybe he was never really caught. If you've ever experienced something like this, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. There's more to come. Stay safe out there.